Hello, everyone. This is Professor Hall. Welcome back. We are talking about Lois Mailou Jones, an artist and educator during the Harlem Renaissance. This is part of our series of great stars or influencers or creators, however you want to put it. In class, we're talking more about the literature, but here I just wanted to present to you some artists and musicians and composers and sculptors and all of that kind of thing, other people who were really influential during the time, right? So let's get started talking about Lois and her life. There she is as a young woman. She was born in 1905, so a little bit later than some of the other people that we've looked at who were, for the most part, born in the 1800s. Her father was a lawyer and was the first African American to graduate from Suffolk Law School. Encouraged by her parents, she started to paint and draw at a very young age, particularly with watercolors. When her family moved to Martha's Vineyard, they were surrounded by artists who really influenced her and helped to develop her talent. And this would kind of imbue in her a desire to do similar things to help other artists the way that she had been helped. So, like a lot of the people that we've talked about, concerned not just about her art, but also her legacy. But her career lasted quite a long time. She took evening classes at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts from 1919 to 1923. If you do the math here, that means that she was taking college classes at the age of 14. So quite a young prodigy. She obtained her first solo exhibition at the age of 18 in Martha's Vineyard. And her exhibition at that point was a solo exhibition, but she also worked very closely with another African American artist at the time who was doing things with textile art. And because of this, she got involved in learning more about textiles, and she had an interest for African masks and later created costumes for a dance school. So quite interesting little turn of career for a bit from painting to creating costumes. But many times people with that kind of talent, that's what they do. They're gifted in multiple ways. Here she is as an older woman with some of her work in the background there. You can see a little bit of inspiration from those African masks that kind of continued to inspire her work. Jones graduated from the School of Museum of Fine Arts at Tufts University and from Design Art School in 1928. Her practice revolved around the Harlem Renaissance artists, notably Aaron Douglas, who we did talk about before, right? He had these really graphic images, and he was an illustrator as well as a muralist and a painter, and tried to teach and mentor others. And so she was part of that whole scene. So you can see that was really the height of the Harlem Renaissance when all of that was going on, but yet her work continued later as well. So in 1937, she went to Paris and studied at the Académie Julian. During her year in the French capital, she produced more than 30 watercolors and 40 paintings in a year. That's a lot. That's 70 paintings in a year. So at least 1.5 a week. Quite prolific. She started using this method of outdoor painting, which was popular in Paris at the time, creating street scenes in kind of an impressionistic style. One biographer said that teaching came naturally to her, but she was rejected by the Boston Museum. The director told her to go, quote, look in the South where people like her lived. So again, there's this impression I think that people get sometimes that the North wasn't racist or wasn't as racist and didn't have Jim Crow laws. But as I mentioned before, we still in the North had segregation. It just was not necessarily in the law books, right? Just more like it went on and people just didn't acknowledge it as much. So she felt like she was rejected by the very places that she had worked before. And from this point, she worked first at the Palmer Memorial Institute in North Carolina, and then Howard University, which was a traditionally black school or historically black college, where she taught and mentored students until her retirement in 1977. But she continued to paint until her death in 1998. Just still working and painting and inspiring others. Amazing. So this is one of her earlier works, and I think that if you have seen Pablo Picasso's Guernica, you might be able to see kind of some influence of that here. This cubist and abstract art that we looked at, or we at least talked about before, with Aaron Douglas, who was one of the people who inspired her work. But you can see a few figures here. One looks like maybe she's lactating there from her breasts, and that kind of thing. But bright colors and really interesting imbuing of different colors and lines here. And here is a scene of Paris. All of the scenes of Paris, I think, kind of all jumbled up together. It's always really interesting to me to kind of look at these finer details of just really small figures in silhouette down here, kind of looking out at the city, moving through the town with the bridges and the Champs-Élysées and the Moulin Rouge over there, and Les Dômes, and then all the people in the party up in the heights of these buildings. Zoom out again. It doesn't exactly look to me like Toulouse-Lautrec, who also painted at the Moulin Rouge. That was in the late 1800s. This is a much more like modern interpretation of the city, and I love the color choices here and the stark black lines, and then the center that looks almost like an eye, and then your eyes drawn to the dome, and then it kind of moves to the rest of the painting. But you'll notice you were very used to, as you can see from this picture, right angles and straight lines, and not a one is here to be found in this picture. We don't have any straight lines for the most part, except maybe here a little bit, some right angles here. Even then they're broken up, right, with the X's to create that triangular 45-degree angle. But everything else is on an angle and curved in the midst of that. So because of that, you get the sense of movement, even though there aren't many people or cars or anything like that, like some of the other artists that we've seen. So zooming in here, the curve of this bisects the angular lines here and here, which then have this wave pattern, which also have the curve here of the bridge, the arches of the bridge, the arch of the dome, again at an angle, and as I said, even here where it might be right angles, bisected by these lines, are intersected rather, and then here cut by the shadow and the light of these kind of half domes where the light would be, so that you never fully, you really have to rest your eye for a moment in that spot, because otherwise it wants to just travel all over the place. And that, of course, is her point. She's trying to get you to feel the excitement of Paris, right? And that outdoor painting style. Here is a much later work, and you can see moving from abstraction into a little more realism, the life and then death of Martin Luther King Jr. Here in protest, influencing children. I Have a Dream speech, looking pensively out of the jail, and then him with his wife, and then in front of thousands, right, at the Washington Monument, and also in repose here after his unfortunate assassination. So really, because she had such a long life, she just took on all of these different painting styles. Here's one much later on in her career, Lois Jones here, 1985. And we have an African-inspired scene, and possibly with the colors and the dress of a woman braiding someone's hair, And the pattern here, very reminiscent of textiles, right? So some similar themes throughout her work, some similar color schemes, but such a versatile artist in how she shaped things and looked at the world through various points in time and being influenced by world events and what was going on, not only in her life, but in the larger world. So this is where we leave off. I hope that you learned something from this lecture and the others, and I hope that it just inspired you. These little short bits of, like, I think our shortest was 8 and our longest was maybe 12 or 13. I hope that it inspired you to just learn more about all the amazing people who lived and worked during this time and what they did and how it really made an impact on the world and people around them, and how it even now impacts not just what we read, but what we hear and what we see, and how even advertisements maybe are influenced by the artwork and design work of some of these people, and, you know, the music, obviously, that we talked about before, as well as the literature. So that's it. Thank you, everyone.